Houston, we have a problem. Now, one of the reasons I'm here talking is to give the FBA's foundational Black Americans that really don't get into this type of talk. I'm here for you. I'm here to research for you. And I'm here to debate you too, because, I'm not always right, but I got something to say. So, look here. I'm going to start with why I am voting different nowadays. I have a family, uh, and you think about them a lot. Now, if you don't have a family, you're still young, and you pretty much don't care what's going on in the world, and but you do see the prices of things going up and things like that, and you never wondering like, what's going on. So let me start with how I started looking around. I've been looking around, but this is when I said it's time for my vote to go somewhere different. I remember Brian Kemp. I stay in Georgia. Brian Kemp became governor, and he signed a law making gun permits not necessary anymore. Constitutional carry, that's what they call it, when you don't need a permit to carry concealed. And I heard Democrats and my community say this is going to be the worst. No, it's a terrible thing. We need gun permits. And I look at being from Detroit. I'm assuming, I haven't been there in a while, that you still need a gun permit in order to carry concealed. And I look at so many, especially men of color, that didn't know that they caught their case, or they could have avoided catching a case just having a permit, And I look at some of the gun laws passed in the past and why they was passed. One of the laws that was passed by Ronald Reagan when he was governor in California was a direct effect of the Black Panthers. When they start carrying guns, they said, whoa, we got to slow this down. We can't have everybody carrying, well, especially them. They got a bone to pick, and rightly so. They had a bone to pick. So, that being said, he signed into law constitutional carry, which no gun permits. And I could just imagine how many people didn't have to go to jail. Specifically, what I'm concerned about is young black men that just was ignorant of the law, because people say ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So I still voted for Stacey Abrams, but that was an awakening moment for me. So what came next was the presidential election, and we all know what happened there, but I'm going to tell you, I voted for Trump. And he said things that I was like, man, if he can do that, that'd be wonderful. If he can get that passed, that'd be wonderful. And we're so used to people not doing what they said they're going to do. And if you look around, and if you've been looking around, he has been doing everything he said he's going to do. And well, this is the reason we got a problem. See, Houston, we got a problem. Is, if you haven't been up to date, he's trying to acquire Greenland. And it's very important. Greenland is very strategic. Russia and China had their hands in Venezuela. Trump said, nope, 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 nope. Not going to have it. They're trying to get into Greenland. Trump said, nope, 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 not going to have it. So I put together a notebook LM little tutorial for people that need to be caught up. So here we go.
Way up in the frigid waters of the North Atlantic, there's an invisible line, and it has, once again, become one of the world's most critical flashpoints. It's a place where geopolitics, climate change, and raw military power are all colliding. So you're looking at a map here from 1983, showing this huge stretch of ocean that was, for decades, the stage for a silent, incredibly high-stakes drama during the Cold War. But what exactly is this imaginary line? And why on earth was it so important that entire nations were willing to pour enormous resources into controlling it? Well, it's called the GIUK gap. That's short for Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. Now, this isn't just any body of water. Think of it as the critical gateway, the main door, between the Arctic Ocean and all the vital shipping lanes of the North Atlantic. If you're a naval force in the Russian Arctic, this is your primary way out into the rest of the world. To really get why this area is so tense today, we've got to rewind the clock and look at its history as a front line in a massive global struggle. The strategic value of the gap just exploded during World War II. The moment Germany occupied Norway, Britain immediately moved in to control the area. Then, after the war, with the birth of NATO in 1949, this choke point became the primary line of defense against the powerful Soviet Northern Fleet. Their submarines posed a direct threat to the very lifelines of the entire Atlantic Alliance. NATO's strategy was all about defense in depth. So, imagine a Soviet sub trying to break out into the Atlantic. First, it would have to sneak past hunter-killer submarines and carrier groups off the coast of Norway. But if it made it through that first layer, it would then face a second wall of surveillance in the GIUK gap itself, with patrol aircraft flying constantly from bases in Iceland and Scotland. It was this relentless deep-sea cat-and-mouse game. And this quote just brilliantly nails the geography of power here. Iceland and Scotland, they weren't just islands. They were basically unsinkable aircraft carriers. If you controlled these locations, you controlled the skies and the seas of the North Atlantic. That made them absolutely essential to NATO's entire defense strategy. After the Cold War, the GIUK gap kind of faded from the headlines. You'd think it would just be a relic of history. But now it is roaring back to life, and frankly, the stakes are higher than ever. Welcome to what a lot of folks are calling the new great game. So what changed? Well, it really boils down to two huge things. First, the Arctic ice is melting, and that's unlocking brand new, much shorter shipping routes and giving access to a literal treasure trove of natural resources. Second, this new economic frontier is being watched over by some of the most advanced military hardware on the planet, including Russia's strategic submarine fleet. As author Tim Marshall puts it, that hunger for energy and resources is making a new competition in the high north pretty much inevitable. So the GIUK gap isn't just a military choke point anymore. It's the main entrance to this brave new world of opportunity and, yeah, conflict. And Russia has been making its moves for years now. Moscow has been systematically reopening and modernizing dozens of old Soviet bases all across its Arctic coast. They're creating what some call a bastion defense concept, and it comes complete with advanced air defense systems and long-range missiles to secure what it absolutely views as its own backyard. You know, the war in Ukraine has had this fascinating, really lopsided impact on Russia's military. On the one hand, its land forces, including elite Arctic units like the 200th Motorized Rifle Brigade, have been decimated. But, and this is a huge but, its naval and air forces are largely intact. That makes its strategic submarine fleet an even more critical tool for projecting power deep into the Atlantic. Okay, so this new reality has forced NATO to respond, creating a really complex new chessboard with more players and a whole new set of pressure points. So, in response, you could say NATO has woken up to the threat. Across the entire alliance, there's a renewed focus on the North Atlantic. We're seeing more patrols, new command structures, and significant investments in the kinds of naval capabilities designed to counter this resurgent challenge. But there's a major wild card here, and it's not a military one. It's entirely political.
We're talking about the question of Scottish independence. So, why does a regional independence movement matter so much in this global game?
Because this is where the UK's nuclear submarine fleet is based, and that fleet is a vital pillar of NATO's nuclear deterrent. If Scotland were to become independent and demand the removal of those submarines, the cost and the sheer complexity of relocating them would be, as one source puts it, excessively high. It could even be fatal for the entire program. It is a huge strategic vulnerability. And if a resurgent Russia and tricky internal NATO politics weren't complicated enough, a new, powerful player has arrived in the Arctic with its own big ambitions, turning a two-sided chessboard into a three-player game. Yep, China. It has declared itself a near-Arctic state and is pushing its Polar Silk Road initiative to develop new commercial shipping routes through these opening waters. Beijing is investing a ton to secure its influence, and while its aims are framed as economic, you can bet this growing presence has put NATO on high alert. So let's pull all these threads together. What does this all mean? Well, the GIUK gap has definitely reemerged from the past, but the new struggle for the High North is just far more complex than anything we saw during the Cold War. The bottom line is this. This isn't just about Russian submarines trying to sneak past NATO patrols anymore. Not by a long shot. The nature of the game in the High North has fundamentally changed. The GIUK gap is now the intersection of three massive global forces. First, it's still that gateway for Russian military power. Second, it's the entry point to a whole new economic frontier driven by climate change. And third, it has become a new arena for great power competition, a three-way contest between Russia, NATO, and an increasingly ambitious China. And all of this leaves us with a critical question for the 21st century. As the physical barrier of ice literally disappears, opening up a whole new ocean at the top of the world, what's going to replace it? Will the nations involved find a way to cooperate over these newfound resources and routes, or is the GIUK gap destined to become the front line in a new and much more complex Cold War?
Yeah, I know it was kind of long, but I had to get you caught up. And for all my people that's in Georgia, you must think twice about some people that tell you who you should vote for. And it's about that time to stop voting for the first black so-and-so and the first black so-and-so and the first so-and-so. You know, it's getting crazy. Let's vote for the person that can deliver for you. I haven't really decided on the Republican candidate yet, but it seems like the Democrats are lock in step only because, my opinion, only because of name recognition, and she could be the first black female governor. Damn. But that being said, Keisha Lansbottom. What did she do before that? Well, not before that, but how do I know her? Because I don't know what she did last, but how do I know her? She was mayor of Atlanta. And people say that she ran her ass up out of there when she was called to Washington by the Biden administration. So are they calling her back because of her name? I don't know. It's time. I'm going to call on the men of the FBA community, or I just want to say the head of households, because it could be women, of course. That's head of households. It's time to focus on who can deliver for our community. So, until the next video, and I'm going to try to get into, well, hopefully tomorrow I can do a video about the Somali fraud. And I'm working on it. So, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.